Why empaths always attract avoidance, the hidden psychology. If this pattern keeps happening to you, it's not because you're too much. It's not because you love wrong. It's because your nervous system is fluent in a language most people never learn to read. And avoidance, especially the charming, high-functioning ones, often recognize that fluency before you do. In a few minutes, I'm going to give you the hidden mechanism that creates the magnet between an empath and an avoidant, the part that isn't romantic at all. And later, I'll show you the one early sign people miss in the first week that would have saved them months of confusion. Let's start with the truth that hurts, but frees you. Empaths don't attract avoidance the way a perfume attracts attention. Empaths often create emotional safety so quickly that avoidance can step into connection without actually staying in connection. You're warm. You're present. You listen in a way that makes a person feel understood. You regulate the room without even trying. And an avoidant, under that cool surface, is usually carrying one fear: closeness will cost me. So when they meet someone who makes closeness feel easy, their system lights up. Not because it's safe, because it's rare. Here's the hidden psychology. The empath is often trained to move toward distance, and the avoidant is trained to move away from closeness. That's not a personality match. That's a wound handshake. You can see it in the smallest moments. You send a thoughtful message. They reply with something warm, then disappear for 12 hours. Your body doesn't relax. Your mind starts working. You rewrite the message in your head, trying to make it lighter, cooler, less needy. You tell yourself they're busy, but your chest feels like it's waiting. That waiting is not love. That waiting is an old pattern being activated. Empaths often grew up in environments where connection wasn't consistent. Love was real, but not reliably available. Maybe a parent was stressed, emotionally absent, unpredictable, or only warm when you were easy. So, you learn something very specific. If I tune in harder, if I give more, if I become more emotionally intelligent, I can bring closeness back. That becomes your superpower, but it also becomes your trap. Because avoidants bring the exact ingredient that triggers that superpower: distance. Avoidants are often people who learned early that needing is dangerous, that depending is disappointing, that emotions come with consequences. They learn to survive by staying self-contained. So when an empath arrives, soft, attentive, emotionally fluent, it feels like relief and threat at the same time. Relief because they finally feel understood. Threat because being understood means being seen, and being seen means being vulnerable. So the avoidant does what their system knows. They approach, then pull away. And the empath does what their system knows. They notice the pull, and they lean in. That's the magnet. Not chemistry, familiarity. Now here's a pattern interrupt for you. If someone's inconsistency makes you try harder, you're not responding to them. You're responding to an old job you had as a child. The job of maintaining connection, the job of earning warmth, the job of being good enough to keep someone close. Watch how it plays out in real life. In the beginning, avoidance can be intense. They can be curious. They can feel almost soulful. They ask deep questions. They text late at night. They open a door and you think, finally, someone who gets me. Then closeness increases. You share something real. You name a need. You ask a simple question like, where's this going? And suddenly, the energy changes. Replies get shorter. Plans become vague. Affection becomes inconsistent. They say things like, I'm just overwhelmed. I don't like labels. I need space. I'm not good at relationships. You hear their pain, so you soften. You become more understanding. You become lower maintenance. You become the safe container. But here's what your body notices that your mind tries to ignore. Every time you ask for more, you get less. That's the avoidant pattern. Not cruelty, not evil, protection. And this is why empaths keep getting pulled in, because you don't interpret the withdrawal as information. You interpret it as an injury, you can heal with more care. You think, if I'm patient, they'll feel safe. Sometimes they do. But safety is not the same as capacity. A person can feel safe with you and still not have the capacity to stay present. And that's where the empath breaks their own heart, by confusing tenderness with readiness. Let me give you the second pattern, interrupt. Empathy without boundaries becomes self-abandonment with good intentions. Now, earlier, I promised you the hidden mechanism. Here it is, cleanly. Empaths often mistake avoidant distance for depth, because distance feels meaningful when you were trained to chase connection. A delayed reply feels like a test. A withdrawn mood feels like a mystery. A half-available person feels like a puzzle you're meant to solve. And when they finally come back warm again, it feels like a reward. That reward pattern is addictive. Not because you're weak, because your nervous system is learning, if I keep trying, I'll get closeness again. That's how you become bonded to inconsistency. Now let's make this practical, because the goal isn't to judge avoidance. The goal is to stop sacrificing yourself to keep the bond alive. Here's the action step you can do today, and it's simple enough to actually use. For the next 2 weeks, stop measuring someone's interest by their intense moments. Measure it by their consistency after closeness. Pick one standard and keep it. If you share something real, their response should feel steady, not disappearing. If you name a need, the response should feel respectful, not punishing. If you ask for clarity, the response should move toward you, not make you feel ashamed for asking. And here's the tool, the 24-hour rule. When someone withdraws, you do not chase for 24 hours. No extra messages, no just checking in, no emotional explanation. You let the silence show you what it is, because chasing turns their avoidance into your responsibility. And that dynamic is exactly what keeps the magnet alive. If they return with warmth and accountability, you learn something. If they return with excuses and distance, you learn something more important. Now, here's the early sign. I said most people miss in the first week. The thing that would have saved you months. It's not that they're busy, it's how they respond to emotional proximity. Watch what happens when you get slightly closer. Not dramatic, just slightly. You ask a normal question like, can we plan for Friday? And they say, I'll see. You share a vulnerable sentence like, I had a hard day, and they respond with a thumbs up, or they change the subject, or they go quiet. You express appreciation, and they shrug it off. You ask what they want, and they give you fog. That fog is the sign. Avoidants often create ambiguity, not because they're confused, but because ambiguity keeps them in control of distance. It lets them receive connection without committing to it. And empaths, because you're naturally generous, often fill the ambiguity with meaning. You think they're scared, they've been hurt. I can be different. But the relationship can't be built on your ability to understand why someone can't show up. It has to be built on their ability to show up anyway. Here's another micro moment that says everything. You finally stop initiating. You stop being the one who checks in first, and the relationship goes quiet. Not because you're playing a game, because the only engine was you. That's not compatibility. That's you doing emotional labor for two people. Now, you might be wondering, do avoidants ever change? Yes, people can grow. But growth doesn't happen because you love harder. Growth happens when someone is willing to tolerate discomfort, take responsibility, and practice closeness as a skill. If an avoidant is doing the work, you'll feel it. They won't just say, I'm trying. You'll see behaviors like, I went quiet, and I realize that impacts you. I'm working on staying present. You'll see repair. You'll see consistency. You'll see them naming their own pattern without you dragging it out of them. If you're not seeing that, then your empathy is being used as a cushion for their avoidance. And that's where your compassion needs to include you. So let's land this in one clear takeaway you can remember. Empaths attract avoidance when empathy becomes a bridge into connection, but boundaries are missing, and inconsistency gets interpreted as depth. Your job is not to stop being empathic. Your job is to stop proving your worth to someone who experiences closeness as pressure. Because the moment you stop chasing, two things happen. You either reveal a person who can meet you with steadiness, or you reveal a dynamic that only survives when you abandon yourself. And either way, you get your life back. Here's the fast recap. The empath moves toward distance because distance feels familiar and fixable. The avoidant moves away from closeness because closeness feels risky. The magnet is a wound handshake. Your action step is the 24-hour rule plus one standard. Measure consistency after closeness, not intensity at the start. If this video described your pattern with uncomfortable accuracy, subscribe, because the next one is where this becomes even sharper. In the next video, I'm going to show you how to spot an avoidant in the first 10 minutes of conversation, the exact phrases that signal, I want connection, but I will punish closeness, and how to respond in a way that protects your nervous system without turning cold.